You're listening to Be the Exception podcast, episode 175. Now, when you talk about co-teaching, collaboration, do you think about special education teachers? Do you also think about how challenging or easy it may be to do that with teachers that you are currently working with? Well, today we have a content expert that knows all things special education, co-teaching, but also collaboration, and she is sharing several amazing tips for us to use so that as we go into a new school year, that you can build the relationships with the general education teachers, whether you're an inclusion specialist or if you're a self-contained teacher, so that you can build that collaboration all year long and that you can provide different strategies and different types of co-teaching that can be used in a variety of different general education settings. So let's go ahead and jump on in to our episode with Meredith from Meredith Mitchell Methods.
Welcome to Be the Exception podcast. As teachers, each one of us has something that comes naturally to us that others would love to know more about. Throughout this podcast, we'll chat with amazing professionals and offer easily digestible tips that you can quickly implement in your classroom or business, helping you stand out with things you do really well. Your host, Dawn Ellis, is a qualified educational specialist with 10 years of special education experience, published journal articles, and was a state finalist for Elementary Teacher of the Year. Dawn provides tools for special education teachers to perform at their very best, helping deal with the frustrating daily obstacles of being an educator. She offers a roadmap of resources and strategies to make you a confident leader in your school and community. So if you're ready to start the conversation, learn from others, and grow together, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, Dawn Ellis.
Hey everyone, today we have Meredith here to chat with us all things collaboration and co-teaching. So help me welcome Meredith to the show. Hey girl, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, welcome back. I'm glad that you are here. For any of our listeners who may not know you and don't get the opportunity to work with you every day, tell us a little bit about yourself in addition to working alongside me day by day. But what all do you do? Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Meredith Mitchell. I am a special education teacher based at an elementary school. That's basically what I have done my whole teaching career. I'm going into my 21st year of teaching, if you can believe it. So I've seen a lot, done a lot, been in a lot of different situations, taught in self-contained classrooms, taught in resource, did co-teaching now. It's just a lot of different things in special education. So I've seen it grow, I've seen it change, and I would keep riding the wave of change and trying to help others, see the change and the possibilities that we have as special education teachers and helping those little kiddos in the classroom and the teachers and coming alongside them and letting them know and helping them and guiding them on how to do inclusion and how it can work for everybody.
That's so awesome. So when you are not teaching, what are some things that you enjoy doing as a non-special educator?
Well, I do have a family. I have 3 children, and so I love to spend time with my husband and them. We love to go to football games, and we enjoy just running and playing outside, going to the beach, the pool, all those kind of fun things. I definitely like to do that outside of school, spend time with family and friends and just hanging out and doing those things that we can just to kind of take our mind off of school.
Absolutely. Now, school is something definitely, I feel like you're a powerhouse with all things co-teaching. Tell us a little bit about your journey with co-teaching, but also for any of our listeners who may not know what co-teaching is.
Sure. So co-teaching is when you have 2 teachers, and usually it is a general education teacher and a special education teacher, and they go in there in the same classroom setting with students that have disabilities and students that don't. And so when you go in there, you work together to teach at the same time. And so, of course, there's 6 different models of co-teaching, and kind of talk about those. One is where the one teacher is teaching and the other one is assisting. That one's always popular and for sure. And then you have one that's parallel teaching, where you teach at the same time, the exact same lesson, 2 different groups of kids. You kind of split them apart. You have station teaching, which is very popular, where it's kind of like centers, or they rotate to each station and each teacher teaches as a group. There's alternative teaching, where sometimes you could do, a teacher has the majority of the class, and then like a special education teacher might just have 4 kids in the back working on certain things. Then you have one teaching and one just observing, and that sometimes can be very helpful if you're having, as a special education, having to do observations on kids, seeing what they need in the classroom. That one is also a popular method a lot of times too. And then you have team teaching, where you might not be teaching the same lesson. You might be 2 different teachers doing 2 different things based on the whole classroom's needs. So those are the 6 different models. They're very easy to do. Once you kind of learn your teaching styles, learn what's going to be needed for each lesson. Sometimes just the different subject areas. It doesn't just have to be reading. You can co-teach for reading, and co-teach for math, and co-teach during science, social studies, really anything during the day. And it really, to me, I have found the benefit of it. In these last few years, I've really just been drawn to co-teaching more and more, as we want to show that inclusion matters, and inclusion is very important. And I feel like the more co-teaching that we can get in there, the more time your kids with special needs can spend in the general education classroom, and then your other children in there can learn from them as well. So everyone is benefiting.
That's so true. And keeping them in their least restrictive environment is definitely what we should be focusing on, in order to help them make sure that they're getting everything that they need to from that general education teacher. And so I love the idea of co-teaching, because it provides it, and it not only provides help for our learners who have IEPs, but even for learners who may not be identified yet, or just struggling with a particular concept, to have some reinforcement or some extra attention for those target areas. So really everyone wins in
Exactly.
the model of co-teaching. So for our listeners who may not may not tried co-teaching, how do you go about even beginning to like set that up? What are some action steps or ways that teachers need to think about or consider to start that kind of mindset change for co-teaching?
The first thing you need to do is, when you get to be a co-teacher, or you decide like who you're going to co-teach with. We all know different teachers have different personalities, what your personality is going to work best with. A lot of times, if you want to focus, you get together. Sometimes you get to pick your co-teacher, sometimes you don't. It's going to be a relationship that you're going to have to foster. And so it's really important for those action steps. One is just to get to know your co-teacher. Right now, the summer is perfect. If you know you're going to co-teach this summer, then go out to lunch, figure out, like, let's meet, let's talk, let's chat, let's get to know each other. Sometimes those just silly little get to know you sheet are great. Write down your favorite things, write down, different things so you can get to know their personalities. It's really important. Sometimes I even suggest doing a personality test. Like, those are fun. You can get them online and see, which way those people are in their relationship, what they need. Some people are loud, some people are quiet, some people, want feedback on notes, some people don't want feedback at all. But so get to know them. Then you really want to, if you already know, and a lot of times special education teachers will know what kids are going into that grade level and what kids you probably are going to have. So if you can kind of go ahead and start discussing like what these children need before the school year starts, what kind of supplies they might need, how we should set up the room, where do they need to be seated. Go ahead and talk through all of those things that those kids with IEPs are going to have and be in your classroom, so you can be prepared for the ones that you do know are coming. And so that way that can take that off your plate. And then the last thing is really try to figure out which method you want to use, and have a co-teaching planning sheet. I have one of those that I use, and you just sit down with that and you look at it and you say, let's plan, let's talk about, what's our first lesson? What are we going to do? Who's going to teach it? Which model are we going to use? And start taking notes from there. And so those are just three little things that you can do at the beginning of the school year to kind of get you ready, get your mindset ready for co-teaching.
That's so awesome. And we can link that, if you don't mind sharing either the link or the information for that planning sheet in the show notes, just to help special educators with that, because I think that sometimes it's a little daunting to like not only have the kids that you're working with, but have to come along a teacher, especially if it's one you're not familiar with. But I feel like it's also important to point out here, like you can start out with one model, and as y'all get to teach and do things and you figure out that it's not working, it's okay to change and try other models as well, even for different classes, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. That's one of the things, like a lot of times when we're teaching like ELA together, and this one co-teacher I do a lot of that with, she's doing the teaching. It's like we usually use one teaching and one assist. So she's teaching the core lesson because she is the expert in that area. And so I come along and I assist the kids in the classroom. We do that a lot. Now, during social studies and science, we use a lot of station teaching where the kids will rotate to each of us as we're doing whatever the project is, or a lot of times they're doing a lot of work on slides, Google Slides, things like that, and they need more help with the technology part of it. And so that's why we do the station teaching a lot of times for that. So yes, we use different methods for different grade levels. And then, like you said, sometimes we're in the middle of the lesson and I've got something to say or a good idea, and I jump in and start, and we kind of swap roles. But again, we're seasoned co-teachers. We know each other very well. I probably wouldn't start that at the beginning of the year, just because you want to make sure everybody kind of stays in their lane. And then after the lesson's over, a really important part of it is to hopefully y'all can plan together. If you can get some good time built into your schedules, at least once a week, to sit down and plan. If you don't have that collaborative planning time, then sometimes it can hurt the method that you're going to use. So if you can try to carve out some time to do the co-planning together, that will help.
Cool. So making sure that you take time, whether it's before the school year starts or as the school year starts, to not only get to know the teacher, but kind of talk through the methods, being intentional with planning time. Are there any other tips for setting up the co-teaching as far as setting up a model to help teachers get started? And then are there also any other resources that teachers can read about to help them feel confident with that?
Sure. So a lot of times, obviously there's some good books out there on co-teaching that you can look at and use your resources and things like that. I've written some blogs about co-teaching and collaboration. And it's something that I always like to think about. Collaboration is so important when you're working together. And so that's just something that you want to focus on, and listening to each other's ideas. I always say, like, no matter where you are on your journey, you can still learn from other people and inspire and motivate others. And so no matter if this is going to be your first year as a co-teacher, or just first year in education, or it's your 21st year like me, as long as you go in that mindset of, I'm going to learn something from you and you can learn something from me. I wish that was something I thought about when I was younger, when I first started teaching. Sometimes we get in that mindset like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't think I know what I'm doing. And I'm with this teacher who's been teaching for 20 years and she knows everything. And, it's not true. We're still learning even at this age, because they're still throwing stuff at us, the education system, new things. Hey, do this, try this. And so we're still all learning no matter where we are in our journey. So, sometimes if you just kind of keep that in your mind, and that you are inspiring other people and motivating other people no matter where you're at, it's definitely can help you as a part of your journey with co-teaching or just teaching in general.
For sure. What are your favorite collaboration tips for new teachers to help them get started with that part of our role as a special educator?
Sometimes when you just go in and you just be honest with the teacher that you're working with, or the kids or the parents, and say, hey, I'll be upfront. I want to collaborate with you. I want to work together. What are some things that you need from me? A lot of times you just ask, how can I help you? And start with that. Then they'll say, oh, well, I need like 2 things that you can help me with. And they can give you those 2 things, and you say, great. And then you can say, well, can you help me with these 2 things? So like, if you get what they need first you get what they need, and then maybe you can give them a tip or a help from what you need. Sometimes that will help with that collaboration process, because it can be daunting sometimes when we definitely have to work together with our teachers, with our kids, with our IEPs, and we need them to do certain things. So sometimes if you just ask them, how can I help you? And then give them that tip, well, now can you help me with this? So we're on the sugar a little bit before you start, right?
So I agree. I think that it's so important to set it up as a give and take, but also that you're there to support them first and foremost, as well. So like, I feel like it's similar advice to what we would talk about, like for paraprofessionals, like never necessarily give them things you're not willing to do. Same thing with a co-teacher, like making sure that you're being mindful of their time, their feelings, their likes, their dislikes, and kind of building that relationship just like you would with a paraprofessional if you're in a self-contained setting or even an inclusion or resource setting as well. Are there any other books or any other resources that you feel like are super helpful for co-teaching or collaboration that you're aware of?
Not with the author, like straight off of the top of my head that I can spout out. I know there are several out there, and I've read some. It was about 2 years ago when I kind of went down that rabbit hole of co-teaching and have them. But they're really good resources. Amazon has a few that you can definitely check out and look at if you want to learn about the 6 models. But you can definitely Google them; they're all out there. There isn't any new models that I'm aware of for the 6 different types. But I will say, research is coming out more and more on the co-teaching models, and it is showing that it is very effective, especially when we have to look at the data, we have to look at those test scores and things like that on those classrooms where they're doing all the inclusion. When we want to see our kids with special education needs, their test scores are rising. And I think it has a big part of that inclusion setting with the co-teaching, and everybody, 2 teachers are better than 1. We all know that, right? You can get in there and work together and help those kids in that classroom. And the more we can keep them in the general education classroom to get those standards taught, if they're on general education standards, then the better off that they're going to be. And so I think that's important to look at those.
For sure. How does the co-teacher play a part at the IEP table? And what information do you feel like you gain from the co-teacher to help you write a new IEP?
Oh, I think that's a great question. Yes, they play a huge role at the IEP table. You need them to come. You need to get their information. A lot of times, obviously I will give them those general education input data sheets that we want them to fill out for us, whether it's on a piece of paper or you send it to them digitally, or you just sit down and have an interview with them, sit down and talk with them. If you're planning together, get them to fill all that information out, and then you get them to come to your IEP meeting so that the parents can talk to them too. And then a lot of times if you've got that teacher in that meeting, they can help you lead the meeting. It doesn't just have to be the special education teacher talking the whole time and not getting any of that really valuable input from the general education teacher. So I always feel like that's super important to have them come and collaborate with you on writing those. And sometimes what I like to do is I assign roles. I'm like, hey, you're coming to the IEP meeting, you're the general education teacher. I need you to bring this and this and this, and then be ready to present it to the parents so that they'll be able to, ask questions, or you can answer them for them. Because a lot of times, they'll say stuff like, you'll put it in the IEP and then you don't know how to explain it as a special education teacher because the general education teacher, is the one that gave you the information. So it's really important to have them there so they can talk about the things that they're teaching in the classroom so they can explain it. And it just makes it beneficial, for everybody. And then to help them write the IEP, they can help you write the goals. It's that kind of thing when you collaborate with them and say, okay, they mastered this goal. What do you think the next goal should be? Because they should know those standards too. So that way it's helpful for everybody. It takes a little bit off of everybody's plate.
Yeah, I think that's so incredible that you pointed out, just like not only respecting their input, but like assigning them roles at the IEP table, because when they feel like they have a part of the meeting, they're a whole lot more likely to like participate the whole time versus just sitting there to be, a part of the team or requirement. And by kind of giving that information out early and having them even review over information that's maybe assessments that are given in the classroom, they're just so much more likely for that give and take of information within the IEP development for their strengths, their weaknesses, because they truly have a pulse on the learner and how they are doing and ways that we could target in a new IEP. So that is great advice. I love that. So are there any other tips that maybe we haven't touched on today that you can think of, or resources to educate special educators at the beginning of the year for co-teaching?
I think it's always a good idea to make sure, if you have a plan and a planner to use when you're co-teaching, whether it not be like just one little simple co-teaching planner sheet, but like a planner for the whole year. I love a good planner. I actually use a digital one and a paper one because I just kind of go back and forth with the calendar and those kind of things. Keep those dates in mind, and your co-teacher can help you with those things too and show them, like here's the IEP, here's when the signature date is, this is when we are going to do these evaluations. These are when we need to make sure we have progress monitoring that is going to be due. So if you sit down with them and you sit down with yourself, and I don't know about you, but I do this at the beginning of the year when you grab all your IEPs and you're like, all right, I'm progress monitoring the first Friday of every single month. And so that's what, I always try to carve out that time. This is what I'm going to be doing that day. So when we get ready to co-teach on that Friday, this is what I'll be pulling them back. So maybe that's when we'll do the alternative teaching model and you'll be teaching the lesson and I'll be pulling the kids to assess the progress monitor. And just because, you're working with your special education kids, you can progress monitor the rest of the kids in that classroom too. You are a special education teacher, but you also can progress monitor and help out the general education teacher because you are going to be, part of those kids. And if you can, always try to help where I'm needed. And I think that goes a long way too for the general education teacher when, you're going to help them out and do those kind of things. So I think that's also, important to make sure you have a planner for the whole year, get those dates written down together so that you can see when all that stuff is due and y'all can work together to get to the end of that goal.
Yeah, I think you're so right about that. Knowing your due dates so they don't sneak up on you and being kind of proactive with monitoring those IEP goals all year long is definitely a huge component of being successful within, a co-teaching, but even any other kind of special educator that may be listening. That goes for self-contained teachers and autism teachers and resource teachers too. So just being mindful of that. So as we kind of move towards the end of the show, what are some of the things that you do to stay motivated, especially on those hard days where it just seemed like all those beautiful plans that you took time to develop just didn't go right, but you show up the next day to keep going and keep moving forward?
I always had to remind myself to give myself grace. I think it's really important to just kind of remember, like, take a deep breath. It's okay. You love your job. You do, appreciate those kids and their families. I know that definitely does motivate me as the kids that I work with, the parents that I get the privilege to work with too, and help them along this journey. And then, the other teachers, they are counting on you, but sometimes, you have to come home and just have a quiet space and some quiet time. And that's something I used to never do. And I was just go, go, go all the time. And then I realized, no, I need to take like 20 minutes just to figure out some things and just have some quiet and peace, whether it be at the end of the school day and I stay in my classroom, a couple more minutes and just kind of decompress, or if I come home and just kind of do the same thing and just kind of take some time for me. I think that's also important. And I also think, when you are co-teaching and you're working with a co-teacher or even a paraprofessional, saying the word, I'm sorry, or saying the word, I'm going to do better tomorrow, or, hey, like, I know this didn't go well today. We were both having an off day. Let's face it, tomorrow, with a new, fresh mindset, a lot of times that'll help too, and it'll help strengthen that relationship.
Yeah, I think definitely taking time to reflect after lessons or after good days and hard days to know how you can always tweak and improve, I think is definitely important. And apologizing and just kind of moving forward. I think that's all great advice. So what is your favorite kind of school supply that always brings a smile to your face?
I'm going to say it. I love a good glitter pen. They make me happy. They make me happy. Now, I will say, don't you ever sign my IEP with a glitter pen, but I do love a good glitter pen. They make me happy, and they make general education teachers happy. And so I do have a stash of glitter pens in my office at school. And so for those of you who don't know, I have a office, which is a closet for a classroom, and that's okay. I love it. I enjoy it. But so people stop by to get glitter pens, and buddy, I have them for them. But and I love Post-it notes. I live and die by a Post-it note too. So I will have stacks and stacks and stacks of really cute ones. I like the ones with the cute little, details and polka dots because they make me happy. So I will have those in my room always.
Love it. I knew I was trying to figure out how to word it to be like besides glitter pens, what is your favorite supply? So you know both of them. But yes, Meredith always has um, glitter pens, and that's one of your favorite tools to like ensure that you get something back. Tell us that little trick that you've come up with and have been successful with over the years.
It is very true. And I should start documenting the data on that. If you give a general education teacher one of those input forms that you need them to fill back and you attach a glitter pen to it and you say like a cute little saying like, thanks for helping me get on the right track, or I couldn't, some kind of cute little, we all have those cute little teacher tags, and we put that on there and said the glitter pen's for you to keep, but fill out the form and send it back. And I mean, like probably 99% accuracy. I get those things back very quickly, and it just makes those the teachers feel good too.
That's so cool. That's awesome. All right. So for any of our listeners who want to connect with you, and I encourage them to find you on Instagram and your website, but will you just tell us again where all to find you and where they can continue to learn and grow with you?
Absolutely. So I do have a website. It's called Meredith Mitchell's Methods. It's there, and I do have all my contact information there. I love to meet with teachers, talk with teachers, mentor teachers, all of those things there on my website. Love to go and do professional development around the Southeast and talk about co-teaching, talk about IEPs and all of those things that go along with being just a special education teacher, and seeing everything that I have on my journey and share it with others. I am on Instagram too at Meredith Mitchell's Methods. So I'm there, and also on Facebook. So I would love to connect with any of the learners and the listeners here on your podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Meredith, for being on the show and just kind of being a powerhouse of wealth of knowledge for all things co-teaching and collaboration, because you really do an amazing job at that within the school that we work in. And so sharing both your successes and things that you can improve on, I think all the things you've shared today is definitely some things that are helpful for our listeners to implement. So thank you for taking time to let us learn from you and continue all the hard work you do.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.